I received a huge inheritance, $5 million, even though I was an orphan my whole life and had no known relatives. I spent my whole life knowing I had no family, just an orphan with no ties to the past. Everything changed with one phone call, revealing an unexpected inheritance from a man I had never heard of, and a devastating secret that would forever alter how I saw my parents' tragic death. I didn't expect my life to change that Thursday afternoon. It started like any other day. I was sitting at my desk, typing up reports and answering emails. The office buzzed with the usual low hum of voices and clicking keyboards. I was tired, a little bored, and counting down the hours until I could go home. Then my phone rang. Just my cell phone, sitting quietly next to my keyboard. I almost ignored it, but something told me to pick it up. Hello? I answered. Hello, Ms. Daniels, a calm, professional voice said. This is Mr. Stevens from Stevens & Associates. I'm calling because you've been named in an inheritance. I blinked. Inheritance? I'm sorry, I replied. I think you have the wrong person. I don't have any family. No, this is correct, he said, sounding certain. It's from a Mr. Greenwood. The name meant nothing to me. I didn't know any Mr. Greenwood. That wasn't my parents' last name, and as far as I knew, I had no living relatives. None at all. I had always believed I was completely alone in the world. I don't know any Mr. Greenwood, I said, confused. Well, he continued, still calm and polite, he left something for you. I'd like you to come by my office on Friday to discuss the details. I sat in silence for a moment, unsure what to say. My mind was racing. Who was this Mr. Greenwood, and why would he leave me anything? I had just turned 28. I had lived my entire life as an orphan. My parents had died in a car accident when I was just 3 months old. I didn't even remember them. Everything I knew about them came from files or things people told me. After the accident, I was placed in the foster care system. I grew up there, bouncing from home to home. I never had any relatives. No grandparents, no aunts or uncles, no cousins. I had been told my parents were both orphans themselves. They'd grown up in a group home, without family. So when they died, I was completely alone. I used to think about that sometimes. How strange it was to be the only one left. Like I was the last branch on a tree that had been cut down. And now, out of nowhere, a lawyer was telling me that someone named Mr. Greenwood had left me something in a will. I agreed to meet with him. I was curious and honestly a little unsettled. After my parents died, my life wasn't easy. I was passed around from one foster home to another. Some were okay, some weren't. I wasn't a difficult kid, just quiet. I didn't cause trouble. I kept to myself. But even then, no one wanted to keep me for long. Most families only seemed interested in the money they got for taking in foster kids. Others had their own children and didn't really include me. Sometimes the other foster kids were mean. I learned to be invisible. That felt safer. When I was 10, there was an older girl at one of the homes. She told me, "You're better off keeping to yourself. People come and go. You'll see." She was right. No one stayed. By the time I was a teenager, I had stopped hoping someone would adopt me. I didn't expect anyone to love me or care. I had to grow up fast. I learned how to take care of myself, how to be independent. I didn't trust people. I didn't let anyone in. School became my safe place. It was the one area I could control. I worked hard, kept my grades up, and stayed out of trouble. I kept my head down and dreamed of the day I could finally leave the system behind. I wanted freedom, even if it meant being alone. When I turned 18, I left the system with just a small bag of clothes and whatever I'd managed to save from the part-time jobs I held through high school. There was no graduation party, no proud family photos, just me, walking away from the group home, quietly stepping into adulthood. College wasn't in the cards. I didn't have the money, and I had no one to help me fill out applications. No support system to fall back on. So I did what I had to do. I found a job. At first, I worked as a barista. It was fast-paced, sometimes chaotic, but it paid the rent and let me buy groceries. Later, I picked up a second job at a local bookstore. It was quieter, slower, and more my speed. I liked the smell of paper and the silence between shelves. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave me peace. That was all I needed, enough to get by. A roof over my head, food on the table, and the chance to live without relying on anyone. I'd spent most of my life learning how not to depend on people, but through everything. Through all the loneliness, the struggle, the quiet moments in my tiny apartment, I never stopped wondering about my parents. What were they like? Were they kind? Would they have loved me if they'd lived? I only had a couple of old photos, blurry and worn around the edges, tucked in a shoebox in the back of my closet. I'd look at them sometimes, especially on hard days. I used to imagine the sound of their voices or what it would have felt like to be held by them. I never got answers, only silence. Then that Thursday came, the phone call from Mr. Stevens. It had thrown me completely off balance. All night, I kept thinking about it, replaying the conversation in my mind. A man I'd never heard of. Mr. Greenwood had apparently left me something. It didn't make sense. I didn't have family. At least, I didn't think I did. When Friday finally arrived, I couldn't focus on anything. My stomach was tight with nerves and I kept checking the clock. 1 o'clock couldn't come soon enough, yet I was also dreading it. What if it was a mistake? What if it was some scam or misunderstanding? Or worse, what if it was real and I found out something I wasn't ready to know? That morning, I called the lawyer's office to confirm the appointment. "Hi, this is Ms. Daniels," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I have a meeting today at 1 o'clock with Mr. Stevens." "Yes, Ms. Daniels," the receptionist replied warmly. "We're expecting you. Mr. Stevens is ready to explain everything." I thanked her and hung up, my hands slightly shaking. The call made it feel more real. I looked around my small apartment, my little world made from scratch. It was quiet, as always. A secondhand couch, a chipped coffee table, books stacked in every corner. Everything in that space was mine, earned and owned. Still, the thought of that inheritance stirred something in me I couldn't name. Fear? Hope? I wasn't sure. I tried to distract myself. I made coffee, cleaned the kitchen, folded laundry. But no matter what I did, my thoughts kept circling, back to the same questions. Who was Mr. Greenwood? Why had he left me anything? I sat on the edge of my bed with my laptop and Googled the name. Mr. Greenwood. It wasn't much help. I found a couple of small businesses with the name and a few unrelated obituaries. Nothing clicked. Nothing tied back to me. I closed the laptop and went to the shoebox in my closet, the one with my parents' old photos and the handful of documents I'd collected over the years. I flipped through every picture I had. My parents at a park. My mother holding me as a baby. My father standing beside her, looking proud. But there was no sign of anyone named Greenwood. No notes, no letters, no old Christmas cards, nothing. It didn't make sense. How could a complete stranger leave something to someone like me? Still, I got dressed, trying to look presentable. Simple slacks and a clean blouse. I pulled my hair back and put on a little mascara. It wasn't for anyone else. It was for me. If I was about to step into something big, I wanted to feel like I belonged in the room. When I arrived at the office, it felt like walking into someone else's world. Everything was polished. Rich, dark wood, clean floors, a huge reception desk. Framed diplomas lined the walls. I felt out of place, like a kid in someone else's story. A well-dressed secretary greeted me and led me down a quiet hallway to a private office. My heart pounded with every step. The door opened and a man stood up from behind a desk. "Ms. Daniels," he said with a gentle smile. "Thank you for coming." He extended his hand. He was older, probably in his late 60s, with thinning gray hair, round glasses, and a calm, measured voice. He looked like someone who had delivered this kind of news many times before. I shook his hand, trying to keep my nerves from showing. "Nice to meet you," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I took a seat in the chair across from his desk and waited. I had no idea what was coming next, but I knew my life was about to change. My hands were clammy. I could feel my heart pounding as I sat in the chair across from Mr. Stevens. The polished desk between us suddenly felt like a wall, a barrier between the life I knew and the one I was about to step into. I tried to calm my nerves, taking a shaky breath. "So," I began, my voice quieter than I intended, "can you tell me who Mr. Greenwood is?" Mr. Stevens gave a slow, understanding nod. He reached for a folder on his desk and opened it carefully, as if the papers inside were delicate or sacred. He looked up at me over the rims of his glasses, his expression serious and gentle at the same time. "I'm going to explain everything," he said, "but I need you to stay with me. This might be difficult to hear." My stomach dropped. I felt a cold wave of dread rise through my chest. My throat tightened. I could barely breathe. My palms gripped the arms of the chair to keep from trembling. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice almost a whisper. Mr. Stevens sighed, the kind of sigh that said he had delivered hard news before and never liked doing it. "Mr. Greenwood," he said slowly, "was the man responsible for the car accident that killed your parents." "What?" I gasped. The word came out sharp and raw, like a scream caught in my throat. I stared at him, my eyes wide, my breath shallow. I couldn't believe what I had just heard. Everything in my body tensed up. The room seemed to blur at the edges, my mind unable to catch up with what he was saying. I sat there frozen, as Mr. Stevens continued. "He was devastated by what happened," he said, his voice calm, but weighted with something deep. "He never meant for anyone to die that night. It was a terrible accident. He had been drinking. He lost control of his car. Your parents were in the wrong place at the wrong time." I felt a lump form in my throat, and I swallowed hard, but it didn't go away. My chest ached. I couldn't even begin to process the thought. Someone had been drinking, driving, and because of that, I lost both of my parents before I ever got the chance to know them. One bad decision had changed my entire life. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison for manslaughter, Mr. Stevens went on. He served his time, but while he was there, he never stopped thinking about your family. He was overwhelmed with guilt. It consumed him. I could hardly hear him over the sound of my own heartbeat, thudding loudly in my ears. I sat in silence, blinking, trying to understand what any of this meant. When he was released, Mr. Stevens said gently, he decided to dedicate the rest of his life to making amends in the only way he knew how. "Making amends?" I repeated softly, still staring blankly ahead. "Yes," Mr. Stevens nodded. "He sold his house. He gave up everything. He moved into a small trailer outside the city. Then he started a small business. Nothing glamorous, just a one-man operation. He worked long hours. He lived simply. and he saved every penny. I was still trying to breathe normally. My mind raced with questions, but no words came out. I didn't understand how I was supposed to feel. Angry, sad, grateful, I didn't know. Over time, Mr. Stevens continued, his business grew. He became quite successful, but he didn't spend the money. He didn't travel or buy anything for himself. He saved it, every cent, because he wanted to give it to you. To me? I whispered. My voice cracked. Yes, to you, Mr. Stevens confirmed, nodding. He hoped that one day you would understand, that one day you'd accept the gift. He didn't believe it could ever erase what he did, but he thought it might help give you something he felt your parents would have wanted you to have: security, stability, a future. I shook my head slowly, disbelief washing over me like a tide. I couldn't stop the words from coming out. Money can't bring back my parents, I said almost to myself. My voice was quiet, but firm. No, it can't, Mr. Stevens agreed. He knew that. He never pretended otherwise, but he believed it was the least he could do. The room fell silent for a long moment. I stared down at the desk, my eyes unfocused. I felt a wave of sadness that didn't come from just this moment, but from a lifetime of loss, confusion, and unanswered questions. My life had been shaped by an accident I knew nothing about, until now. All the birthdays I spent alone, all the nights wondering why no one came for me, the holidays I watched other kids celebrate with families while I sat in a foster home, I now knew the reason behind it. One man's choice had stolen everything from me, and now he wanted to give something back. But what was I supposed to do with that? Forgiveness? I wasn't ready for that. Maybe I never would be, but the truth was in front of me now. No longer. A mystery. Mr. Stevens waited patiently as I tried to collect myself. I could tell he wasn't rushing me. He understood the weight of what had just been said. Finally, I looked up at him. My voice was small, almost broken. What do I do now? He met my eyes with a calm, steady gaze. That's entirely up to you. He didn't have children, Mr. Stevens said, his voice steady but gentle. No other heirs. You were his only focus. I sat in stunned silence, the words echoing in my ears. It didn't feel real. Nothing about this felt real. Mr. Stevens looked down at the folder in front of him, then back up at me. The inheritance is $5 million, Ms. Daniels, he continued. Every penny Mr. Greenwood earned after getting out of prison was set aside for you. He worked for it, saved it, and lived very simply, just so he could leave it to you. He spent the rest of his life trying to make amends for that night. $5 million. The number hit me like a wave, too big to fully grasp. My mind started spinning. I tried to imagine what that kind of money even looked like, what it could do. For someone like me, it was unimaginable. I had never had much. I'd grown up wearing hand-me-down clothes, using food stamps, and watching other kids go on family vacations while I stayed behind. I never complained. I didn't know anything else, but I always dreamed of more. This kind of money could change everything. I could pay off every debt I'd ever had. I could quit my jobs and maybe go back to school. I could move somewhere quiet and safe. I could even travel, something I'd never dared to hope for. And yet, I felt sick. My hands started to shake again, and I clenched them in my lap. This money wasn't a lottery win or some unexpected gift from a kind stranger. It came from guilt, from tragedy, from the worst moment of my life, the man who killed my parents. The man whose actions had left me orphaned, abandoned, and raised by strangers wanted me to live off his guilt? How could I accept that? What kind of life would that be? I don't think I can take it, I said quietly, my voice almost too soft to hear. Mr. Stevens didn't look surprised. He nodded slowly, offering a look of understanding. It's a lot to process, he said kindly. You don't have to decide today. You can take all the time you need. But I already knew. Deep down, I had known the moment he said the words. I didn't want the money. Not like this. It didn't feel right. It never would. I can't take the money, I repeated, more firmly this time. I looked him in the eye, trying to keep my voice steady. I don't want anything from him. There was a long pause. Mr. Stevens didn't argue. He simply nodded again. I understand. I sat back in my chair, my mind still spinning, but there was something else tugging at me. A thought. A need to do something meaningful with what had been left behind. I don't want it to be wasted either, I said after a moment. If he really spent his whole life saving it, maybe it can still do some good. Mr. Stevens leaned forward slightly, listening. Can you transfer it to a charity? I asked. Something for orphans, maybe. Kids who went through what I did. I think that would be the best way to use it. The corner of his mouth lifted, in a small, almost knowing smile. Of course, he said. I can arrange that. There are several well-run foundations that support children in the foster care system. Help with housing, education, mental health. I'll make sure it goes to a good cause. I nodded slowly, the knot in my stomach easing just a little. It wasn't closure, not really, but it was something. I didn't want blood money sitting in a bank account. I didn't want to benefit from someone else's shame, but maybe that money could help kids like me. Maybe it could help make sure another child didn't grow up feeling as alone and forgotten as I had. In the days that followed the meeting, I thought about my parents more than usual. I had so few memories, just stories told to me by foster parents or social workers, just photos and questions. But somehow, After hearing about Mr. Greenwood, I felt a little closer to them. It was strange. I still didn't know who they were in any full or complete sense. I didn't know their favorite songs or how they met or what their dreams were. But now I knew they had mattered to someone, even if it was in the worst way, through loss and regret, but they had left a mark. Their lives had meant something, even beyond me. I still had no desire to forgive Mr. Greenwood. I wasn't sure if I ever would. Some wounds go too deep, but I couldn't deny that he had tried, in his own way, to do something right in the end. It didn't undo what had been done. It didn't erase the pain, the years of loneliness, or the childhood that was stolen from me. But it offered a glimmer of light, an opportunity to help others who were walking the path I had once walked alone. Maybe that's what redemption looks like. Not erasing the past, but trying to plant something good in the soil it left behind. And maybe, in a way I didn't fully understand, that's what my parents would have wanted too.